Hello, supply chain world. I'm super excited about today's topic, but I'm super excited even more so if you are an emerging supply chain professional, because today's topic is specifically for you. We're going to be talking about how emerging supply chain professionals can prepare for interviews. So get your pen and paper ready. If you're a supply chain student, perhaps anxious to secure your first role within an organization, this is for you. Or perhaps you're a supply chain graduate that is still searching for that one organization that really resonates with you. This is for you. Either way, it's an exciting time and the world is truly your oyster. So congratulations. It's such a great place to be. And it's time to capitalize on your strengths and a very strong job process to be able to secure those interviews. So I'm going to be providing lots of tips and tricks, but also asking you lots of questions to ensure that you are prepared. And first and foremost, let's take this time to reflect, right? You put so much time and effort into this moment, and this is truly your moment. So how do you prepare? First and foremost, I would say that it's really important to understand yourself, right? To be self-aware. Understand your strengths. Understand areas where you're not strong. We're not perfect in everything, and that's absolutely okay. Understand your level of emotional intelligence and perhaps even positive intelligence. And if you don't know what those are, this is your time to look it up and to really understand yourself. And then what are your unique experiences and how do you differentiate yourself because of those experiences, right? Think through what truly is unique about you. And then have you determined what makes certain organizations truly intriguing to you? Have you done your research on that? As a coach, I do have a specific process I take my clients through to better understand, what their values are, what their strengths are, their career aspirations, and then helping them to begin finding which organizations actually match to their values, to their strengths, right? What roles those organizations have that are really a good fit based on what they've learned about themselves and what they can bring to the table in an organization. And then we take it to the next level of really understanding how do you network with those organizations you're intrigued by. Once an individual goes through this process, they're really, really prepared for that interview once it's scheduled. So let's talk about some of those important elements in order to be uberly prepared. So we did already talk about research, right? So you want to research the organizations that you're interested in and take really good notes. Be able to compare your strengths and your values to the organization's strengths and values, and then also take it a level deeper into the role as well. Have you done your research on the people within the organization, right? Have you looked at LinkedIn profiles? Have you kind of got an understanding of the culture and maybe even the hiring team and what they're like, what's important to them? And then furthermore, do your research on the position, right? Really, what intrigues you about that position? And then it's also your opportunity to take it a step further, right? So getting into the details of, refreshing your resume based on those positions that you've decided are the ones for you. How do you make sure that your resume reflects those roles and authentically reflects it, right? We know that job descriptions have keywords in them that organizations use, and if your resume doesn't include any of those keywords, I would ask, do you really believe that that position is the one for you? You want to consider adding keywords, right, that do resonate with you and are based on your experiences that match to the job description. But again, if there are no keywords that do resonate with you, then I would potentially consider moving on to the next role. Also, I would say refresh your memory on what you've learned. Before you go into that interview, make sure you refresh your memory on what you've learned about the organization, the role, and the people you would potentially be working with. Is there anything missing where you need to connect the dots within that interview and ask questions about? Where do the lines not meet with the values, the strengths, etc.? And why do you want to be at that organization? What intrigues you? What is so great about the culture, about the mission and the vision? What really resonates with you? And how can you communicate that during the interview process? It's also another great idea to research the competitor of the organization and understand what differentiates them compared to them, maybe what makes them successful. And then be prepared for potential interview questions, right? So do you know what could be asked? What makes you you? What makes you different from other candidates? What's your vision? What are your goals? Have you taken assessments, and what are those results? And how can you communicate that to them in the interview process? And how can you be authentically you, uniquely you? Based on your experiences and who you are as an individual in that interview process. Think about the experiences and leveraging your strengths within the supply chain realm. How do you envision yourself doing that? Have you researched any current supply chain issues and stayed abreast of, say, supply chain innovations? Can you speak to those? And can you speak to what you bring to the table within that organization? And then the next layer would be, how do you ensure confidence as you go into that interview process? How do you get yourself energized and to, replace that nervousness with energy as you walk into that room or as you're on video with the interview team? How do you take control of that process? And, one thing that I would suggest is, consider, how do you speak the language of that organization? So when you do speak within the interviews, it sounds like you're already part of the team. And again, really rely on your experience, what makes you different, and get energized and excited about the strengths that are individually you and makes you the best candidate for these roles. And then I'm going to leave you with some great wrap-up things to do in the interview process. Ask questions, right? Nobody wants to be left with 10 minutes in an interview where the candidate does not ask any questions. I'm sure a lot of your questions were probably answered during the interview process. And that means that you should have, twice as many questions prepared as you typically would. You want to be able to at least ask 2 to 3 questions at the end. And perhaps if all of your questions have been answered, you can think back through, what you all talked about in that interview and ask some questions based on the things that you've learned. And lastly, what does the wrap-up communication look like? Are you going to send a written thank you note to all of the interviewers, or are you going to send an email? And do you have the information you need in order to do that? Because that is really important. I would do what resonates with you and what is meaningful and thoughtful to you. But it's always a good, way to kind of wrap it up with the interview team and show them that this is something that is really important to you. And in that wrap-up communication, don't concentrate specifically only on the strengths and the experiences that you can bring to the table, but, how you can take the organization forward and the mission and vision that they have, right? And how you're excited about that. Of course, that's going to include some of your strengths, as obviously, but you don't want to just stop there, right? You want to really think deeply about how you're going to do that and what that's going to mean for the organization. And if you can communicate that really well, then I think that you will definitely, again, differentiate yourself in this interview process. So I hope these have been helpful for you. I hope these tips and tricks were things that maybe you hadn't thought of or worked through in the past. And good luck. I wish you the best.